one side of a coin is opportunity, the other side is risk. So if you only look at risk, you don't look at opportunity. And like you said, you went into distressed properties in the middle of the housing bubble. So that's how you can be flexible and you can be innovative and get your business going. I think that's very important, and be persevere in the process. Oscar, please.
Well, I hope you've all been listening to what these three individuals have been sharing with you, because it's inspiring what you've all been through and the things that you've done and what you've been able to accomplish. It's almost left me speechless, but the reality is I'm never speechless. I always have something to say. But I hope you have listened, because passion, dealing with difficult situations, I think we're all graduates of that. I mean, I tend to always say that, you know, one of the reasons that I've been able to become what I've become is because I'm a PhD. And when I say that, people go, wow, you know, you don't list it, you don't list your doctorate degree. I said, no, I was poor, hungry, and desperate. And many of us, and many of you who have had to immigrate and change countries, we had to go through some very, very, very difficult times. And one of the things that has allowed me to succeed is I've never, ever forgotten where I've come from. Whether it's family, whether it's culture, whether it's country. I've also haven't forgotten who's helped us along the way. And that keeps it real, that keeps it humble. But just because, you know, sometimes material things get in the way and they can overcome you and make you lose your sense of reason. One of the ways that I keep things real is by constantly reminding myself every day, where did I come from? And even today, so for example, these cufflinks. Now you're going to say, okay, here he goes showing the glitz, the bling bling and all that. Actually, these cufflinks are 2 Cuban nickels that were in my father's pocket when he immigrated from Cuba. Now, my wife did a wonderful thing, which is I always kept them in like a lucky jar. And I'll tell you, I had a horrible moment one day when I opened the jar and they were gone. They were gone. And I didn't know how to tell my sister I lost the nickels. I didn't know how to tell my mother I lost the nickels. My father had already passed away. I'm there like, boy, what did I do? And my wife didn't say a word, and she knew how distraught I was, but she was actually having them mounted, right, into cufflinks. So anyway, remembering where you come from, and I do that every day. I try to make sure I keep myself real. I'll leave you with 2 other things, because there's so much that this panel has to share with you, which is I've always held myself highly accountable and responsible. And maybe that's something clearly I've received from my parents. And having to start all over again and having to earn everything all over again. I still have my train set from when I was 6 years old. I won't throw it away. And it's because that's the only toy that I had, right? So it's keeping yourself humble, but then being very, very accountable, and then always delivering, and not just delivering on what's expected of you. You know, most of my career has been in tax, and I remember as a manager when I got to manage accounts, and we would complete something as simple as a tax return. Well, I always volunteered to take the tax return to the client. And many of my peers would just use a courier or whatever. I went straight to the client. Now, we both accomplished our goal, right? We both delivered the return, but I met with the client in person, and I went through that return. Well, little by little, those clients became where I got to serve them as the partner, and I became a trusted business advisor. So, you know, things like that, which leads me to my final comment, which is, you know, sometimes we start worrying too much about things that we can't control and lose focus of the things you can control. And I've always erred on focusing, as easy as it is to be distracted on what you can't control, but focusing on what you can control. You were talking about when you came out of school, the worst of times. 1981, when I came out of school from here, mortgage rates were 21%, right, Tony? I mean, the savings and bank debacle, I mean, it was horrible. And we saw it all over again. But, you know, if you just stuck to what you could control, what could I control? But, you know, thank you for acknowledging I graduated summa cum laude, but that's what I could control. And I was working 40, 50 hours a week. I spent more time at school and at work than I did at home. right? I just used home for sleeping, but that's what I could control. So if you err on that, chances are you're going to help yourself be able to be successful.
This is very good. I appreciate it, all the panelists, all our colleagues, your statements about this, and I hope everybody was listening. And I have another question that come up, and in the School of Business, we say that ethics and leadership are the keys to success. In addition to all the very fine points everyone has made, which is part of leadership, actually. But since you are in a position of, as an executive, in a position of leadership, what is your leadership style in terms of getting things done, getting people to move in the right direction without having to coerce people? So what is your leadership style, and what is the most important aspect of your job? Is it leadership? Is it strategy? What is it that makes you successful in your present position? Who wants to start? I'm going to give everybody here.
I just ended, so I feel like
We go the same?
Same sequence?
Let's keep the same
Let's
rhythm.
go with you. Carlos,
I think that we are the largest company in South Florida in what we do, and we're like 1,200 people directly, like 5,000 people indirectly that work for AT&T one way or the other, and which means that I don't do anything because I cannot. If you need 5,000 people to do something, one person cannot do it. So what I think a leader needs to do is to inspire his people or her people, because it's through them that you get things done. Through them understanding the strategy, through them understanding the why, through them understanding why is it in it for them too, because we all have our needs, our wants, our dreams. But as you go up in organizations and you become a leader or somebody with responsibility over large groups of people that in turn touch huge amounts of customers, your job is more of a communicator, of a inspirer, more of a person that convinces everyone to roll in the same direction. And if you can do that, that's why when some of you mentioned, you said that you look for people that can communicate. That's very important. I don't care how intelligent you are if you cannot communicate with people. If you cannot sell your dream, if you cannot convince people to follow you, then you're not a leader. You're not a leader. And so to me, leading is inspiring. It's explaining where you're going, why you're going, what each person needs to do, which is also very important, so they know what role they need to play. And very important, give every person his or her value for what they do, no matter what they do in the organization, because everybody is very important, and recognizing them from time to time. So inspiring, recognizing, communicating, to me that's what a leader needs to do once the vision is clear. So that's what I see.
Thank you. Raul, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, leading by example, as Carlos was mentioned, is a very important ingredient. I'm a hands-on CEO of my company, hands-on in the sense that I get involved in operations, but I'm also, most of what I do is strategic thinking as to where the company is going to go. In the last 5 years, what I have found to be very effective is what I call a company and its people needing to adapt to the environment. I got into the TV business in 2006, relatively recently, and I knew, I'd been in radio for a long time, and I knew that I was going to get kicked around because I didn't know the business. Well, I knew broadcasting and radio, there's a lot of similarities with a lot of differences. And I told my people, we're going to weather this and learn about this business, on-the-job training, so to speak. What I didn't count on, and nobody could predict, was the oncoming economic calamity that we've gone through. I was already in television, so I I couldn't back out. So I said to my people, you know, I remember, I said, we're gonna have to adapt in order to survive. We're going to have to avoid inertia that comes from conventionality, and we're gonna have to adapt. We're gonna have to do things the new way. And I remember going to the set of a program, one of the programs that we have on television, and I just stopped by the set one day, and it was something like 18 people to do the program. You have the cameraman, and you have the makeup girl, and you have the wardrobe, and you have the teleprompter people, you have the lighting, and you have the sound, and you have, of course, the talent, and you have the writers, and you have the editors, and the technical guys switching back and forth. And I said, you know, it seems to me that we can do this with about half as many people. No one can't be done that way. And I said, why not? That's a simple enough question. Why? Well, no, Mr. Aracoa, it's always been, this in the advent of television, it's always been done that way. There has to be a line, but it was 3 producers. It was a line producer, an associate producer, general, they had all kinds of work. I said, I don't understand why we had to do it this way. Why do we have to do it this way? Well, to make a long story short, they were either gonna convince me or I was gonna convince them, and it turned out that I had to convince them because we were in the middle of a calamity and we had to survive. And so I don't know if we reinvented the wheel. I can tell you that in my company, and Tony knows this, a company that had let's call it $140 million in revenue a year, we were able to take out $50 million a year in expenses. That's a huge number on a company of that size. And the way I did it, I lost my eyesight doing it. I did it by line, going through every single thing and asking the question, can we do this different? Why can't we do it different? But that type of inertia is very hard to break. But this is what I call adaptation by necessity. You know? And what I have found and what I've told my people now is that I would want them to be reflecting that in everything they do. Just because it's been done a certain way for 20 or 30 years, someone has got to ask the question, in this environment where you all are going to have to wear 4 or 5 different hats. It's no longer, well, I'm the assistant to the assistant producer. Assistant producer, the assistant's gone, the assistant producer's gone, and be careful that the producer's gone. You know? So, but in order to survive in a world like that, and that's what you're going to be facing when you leave here. You're going to be facing a world where you're going to have to prove that you have the passion, the perseverance, but that you can adapt. I can do 10 things that before were done by 20 people, I can do it myself. That takes enormous effort. But it starts with asking yourself, why does it have to be the way it's always been? That's what got us to this problem in the first place.
Thank you. No, that's a type of leadership, you know, asking why not. I mean, you know, why can you do that? And then convincing people that it can be done better, more efficiently. I mean, that's very important.
And survival, Tom.
And survival.
Absolute survival.
Survival. This thing. Adam, please.
Okay. When we formed our company, we had to come up with a mission statement, which was what's our objective for the company. And we were basically a bunch of firms coming together, in essence, partners. And the first thing we came up with as far as our business and our mission statement is that the client comes first, and that there's no me. And that kind of drives our business, drives me personally, which is, I view myself as a leader, as a bit of a servant. And that is, you're actually working for the betterment of your group, or your organization, whatever the case may be. So whether that's, you know, strategic direction, as Raul mentioned, et cetera, you know, given the proper guidance in terms of how things should be done. But a primary guidance is, in our business, is that the client comes first and it's not me. So if we have people in our firm who have egos, and they may be making millions of dollars. We will, and those egos are getting in the way of clients, they're getting in the way of their colleagues. It becomes a me situation, we'll fire them immediately. Because we're looking for people who have a real team spirit. And by having a team is the way we believe we've been successful. And it's a culture based on sharing information, working together, working not for one's own purpose. And that's kind of been my, I guess you would say, leadership approach. Another important thing I find leadership is integrity. And in our business, which is capital markets, and investment banking has been in the press a lot and all that, et cetera, integrity is super duper important. So it's always doing the right thing. So it's not, doesn't mean making the last buck on a deal or turning something around so you can get an advantage. It's doing the right thing. It's doing the right thing for your client, doing the right thing for your colleagues, doing the right thing for the business. And for me, one of the best things I can hear about us as a firm is when someone says, boy, you guys have incredible integrity. And for me, that's the success. And there's clients out there that we could do business with that I know operate on the edge. And as I tell my guys, I don't even want to get near them. Life's too short, et cetera. So that's a little bit, my thoughts, I guess, from leadership.
Very good, thank you. Yeah. Ethics, integrity, critical for the long term, absolutely. Oscar, please.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to pile on because I violently agree with what all three of you have said in terms of what are the key elements of leadership. Maybe what I'll do is slice it a different way, which is I'll tell you just my thoughts on leadership and then what type of leader I believe I might be, in case I have to marshal you all to a fire or something. Look, there's two types of leaders, right? There's those that are titled, and because by their title, they have this theoretical right to lead. And then there are leaders who are leaders because people want to be led by them. And some of those individuals are actually titled leaders. I think part of the problem we have today in this country is, to your point, Carlos, on inspiration, a lot of our leaders are lacking that ability to inspire, and that's a key fundamental to leadership. And that's why we're at this crux where people aren't wanting to follow. And this isn't either part. I mean, this is unfortunate that something that's happening like this. And what we really need, or the essence of leadership, is in those that will inspire and have three key elements. So why will people allow to be led by these individuals? And that's because, and I think you've all said it, but I'm going to say it a little differently, they have credibility, they garner respect, and they inspire trust, right? So those are, to me, the three essentials of leadership: credibility, respect, and trust. And to be credible, you have to do the right things. Back to your point, Manny, on integrity. To be respected, you can't demand respect. You earn respect by doing the right things and having integrity. And you can't ask people to trust you just by asking them to trust you, but by earning their trust. So that's what leaders, real leaders, do, those three things. The type of leadership that I believe that I have, or that I try to have, is I always remember the CRT, credibility, respect, and trust, so always focusing on that. But what I try to err on doing the most is being an inclusive leader. And an inclusive leader isn't just about ethnicity or gender. I mean, those are key elements of inclusive leadership, but it's about, making sure that everyone on your team has a voice and has an opportunity to contribute, even though you may not agree with them. And sometimes I actually want that. I want people that don't agree with what I'm thinking, because you know what? I may actually be wrong. And I have, at least I don't mind admitting that I may be wrong. My wife argues that Nishi's always right and I'm always wrong, but that's a different type of leadership and all that.
That's called
But,
survival.
you know, again, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with actually saying, you know what, that may not have been the best course. And that, I think, also is leadership, right? Is correcting your path when you need to. But making sure that everyone has a seat at the table is very important, and listening to those that have a seat at the table. But then having to make the decision when you need to as well.
Thank you. And the CRT, I hope everybody remembers that. Credibility, respect, and trust. That's very important. And all the lessons that we have learned here in this excellent panel. I just have a couple of questions and then open it up for Q&A from all of us that are here today. This is more futures, so I have two future type questions. One is what is the present climate in your own industry? What do you see happening in your company, in your industry? What are the changes and opportunities that you see, perceive happening over the next several years? So maybe more for an economist, but you know, we don't have a good track record, so maybe we should have an executive really tell us about that. In other words, what do you see happening in your own industry, and what are the challenges and opportunities? Maybe we can start with Oscar. Can we connect that with you?
Sure. No, and I promise to make it quick. So
that's all right.
in terms of the accounting profession, I mean, we have become regulated. That's probably the biggest difference and the biggest challenge we're having to get accustomed to. And it isn't just in the U.S. I mean, it's in Europe. It's across the world. The jurisdictions in which we work in want to regulate us. I'll tell you, if you just Google this and look at what's happening in China with the accounting profession and the SEC trying to reach into and trying to have jurisdiction over China, and China saying, no, you don't have any right to look at what our accountants are doing here. So I mean, that one's, I would stay close to that. It's going to be really interesting as to who wins that war, that regulatory war. But we're right now being heavily regulated. So it's not about fighting the regulators, but it's understanding what the mission is of the regulator and then adapting our business so that we can comply. Because, again, back to your point, Manny, on integrity, I mean, we want to do the right thing, and we're going to follow the regulations, and we're going to comply. But we're not going to do things blindly either. The other one is risk. You know, we're always managing risk. And one part of my job, and probably the thing that I think of the most every day, is managing the risk of the firm, and that's either accepting new clients or existing clients or transactions with clients or our people. It's all, a lot of it circles around risk and dealing with risk. And then the third component, and it's been said already before, it's the globalization that's happening in our economies. And we as a firm, our biggest challenge is making sure we can act seamlessly around the world, even though we have to deal with different laws and jurisdictions and regulatory bodies, etc., and cultures. At the end of the day, when AT&T hires us to do a global project, they don't care about how we get it done and what countries we have to get it done. They hire one firm. They hire Ernst & Young. So being able to act seamlessly is a key challenge for us.